Good morning. I'd like to call the September 24th School Board Special Meeting to order. Can we all rise and say the pledge to the flag?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. May I have a motion to adopt today's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Lisa. Chris, any changes or modifications to the agenda? Nope. All right, seeing none, can I have all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, agenda, motion carries. I'd like to introduce the first agenda item this morning, the approval of sale 2020H general obligation refunding bonds. Dr. Peterson.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the 2020H general obligation refunding bonds are being done at this time so that it can be part of the levy that you're going to look at later. So I'm going to have Paul talk to you about the rates that we were able to obtain on that.
Thank you, Dr. Pearson. Madam Chair, members of the board, the 2020H and then the following 2020I are two bond issues that we're refunding to accrue savings, basically to the taxpayers. We've really kind of been active in our financial management with our various bond issues, and this 2020H, it's only $695,000, but by doing this transaction, we save basically approximately $44,947 on the remaining bond payments, so it's well worth our while to do that. And then to date, over the past years, since we've really done this active financial management, we've done 37 different refunding transactions with a cumulative savings of now with these two bond issues over $23 million. So it adds up over time. For the 2020H, we sold Tuesday, and they were sold at an interest rate cost of 0.89%, and that reduced the interest rate down from 2.53% down to 0.89%, with a $44,947 net present value savings. So we'd ask that you'd approve the sale.
That's great. Great savings. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Mr. Bourgeois? All right, seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the 2020H sale resolution as prepared by Dorsey and Whitney?
So moved.
Thank you, Mark. Oh, sorry.
Mike?
And now Mike a second.
Yep, second.
I saw a hand first. All right. Any comments, questions? Nope. Yeah, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Let's move on to our next agenda item, which is the approval of sale of the 2020I certifications of participation refunding bonds, and this is also a carry-in item in front of you. Dr. Peterson.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the board, this item is, well, it's not a GO bond, it's the participation, certificate of participation, but it's being done so that we can tie the gains into the levy that you're going to consider later. So Paul Bourgeois will give you an update on the rates that we were able to obtain for this.
Thank you, Dr. Pearson. Madam Chair, members of the board, for the 2020I certificates of participation, we're refunding the outstanding principal from the 2014B COP bonds. Those were originally issued as a first tranche to fund space for all-day kindergarten and in the music rooms at several of the elementary schools. So we sold these also on September 22nd, and we had a very successful sale. It's $1,290,000 of bonds being refunded. We're basically reducing the future payments by $103,017.44, which is a 6.6% savings. And the interest rate was reduced from 4.05% down to 2.35%. So we're asking that you approve this bond sale.
Okay, another great savings. May I have a motion to approve the 2020I certificates of participation refunding bonds?
So moved.
Chris,
Second.
thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Any comments or questions for Mr. Bourgeois? Lisa.
I know it's just awesome to hear. Sorry. it's awesome to hear the history of this, so thanks for bringing that up to us. I know we've been, as you said, very active in this, and I really appreciate all your work and your team's work on doing it. So it's been a tremendous savings for the district, and we've done a lot of great things for kids with it, so.
Fun challenge.
That's great. Any other comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, seeing none, motion carries. Thank you very much. That's wonderful savings this morning. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is the certification of 2020 pay 2021 preliminary levy. Dr. Peterson.
Madam Chair, members of the board, this, of course, is a huge item for the board, and you need to, by law, adopt a preliminary levy by the 30th of September. And Mr. Bourgeois works closely with the Department of Education to get those different levies put together to total the overall levy. And then tax bills estimated tax bills will be sent out to all the taxpayers based upon this proposed levy. And then in December, you will, of course, consider the final levy for 2020 pay 2021, which is used for fiscal 22. And so Ms. Bourgeois has a very nice presentation to walk through for you to show you how we've arrived at this grand total and the various major sub-levies, if you will. So, Mr. Bourgeois.
Thank you, Dr. Pearson. Madam Chair, members of the board, this is a similar presentation to what we did at the study session a week ago. Ironically, while I was presenting at that study session, which started at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, about 6:05 in my email, there was an email that came in that said, oh, well, there's a new levy report with some other adjustments to it. So there's about $232,000 adjustments related to the what's called the debt service excess. That's calculated by the Department of Education, and that's the major change that you'll see on this. It's actually up about $232,000 from what we studied at the study session. So I'll run through this report again. We're on as we're being televised so that the public can hear the individual items also. And then we have to certify the levy after approval of this amount, which is going to be the maximum that we can levy through between now. No changes up between now and December when the final levy is in place. I'll have to get that to the Hennepin County and the Department of Education prior to September 30th. So we have 9 major levy categories. They're listed out there. I won't read through them all down the line, but I'll go through them one by one on subsequent pages. But these levies actually, these 9 make up 95% of the total levy. The biggest single levy item that we do is the operating referendum revenue. And it's at $22,271,000 this year, and it's up about $742,000 from last year. That is mainly attributable to the inflation factor of 2.31% that the voters approved. We also have a slight increase in the projection for 11,100 students for fiscal year 22 from what we had originally projected for fiscal 21, which was slightly under that. And so there's a slight bump up in terms of the number of students, assuming that we hit our 11,100. If we don't, it gets adjusted in a future year for any students that we wouldn't have at 11,100. Now, being at the statutory cap, we receive voter-approved inflation factor annually, but we cannot ask the voters of the district for any future increase. So at this point in time, in statute, we can ask for an extension with an inflation factor, but we can't ask for an additional dollar amount per pupil when we come up to the future renewal of it. We have this authority through the 24 pay 25 levy for fiscal 26. Local optional revenue. This is actually $724 per adjusted pupil, and all this revenue was originally on the operating referendum and approved by the voters. And there were two different actions by the legislature to take chunks of the operating referendum and put it into local optional revenue and make it be a permanent levy that does not require future renewal. The first one was $424 back in 2014 and 2015, and just recently $300 starting last year. So there's a small amount of state aid on this one because we get $8,823,000 on this levy, or for this revenue, but $166,000 of it comes from the state. The rest of it is, the $8.656 million is local taxpayers. Our technology referendum revenue is $6,916,000 and change. It's a almost a $330,000 increase over last year. This is based completely on the value of property in the district. So as property values rise, either through reassessment or as more property gets built in the district, as new homes infill on vacant lots, the total property value of the district goes up, so we collect more dollars. Now, in difficult times, such as during the recession when there was a decline in home values, we can actually have this levy go down. This levy is primarily used to fund many of the technology initiatives in the district and a few other small line items. Everything is voter approved, and we have this authority through the 24 pay 25 levy for fiscal 26. One other item on this right now. So this is the sole referendum revenue that if at the point in time we did a renewal and we determined that we needed to ask the voters for additional dollars, this is the sole revenue source where we can, right now, with the statutes on the books, that we could ask for additional dollars in the future if we needed it. Equity levy is a levy based on percentage. There's a calculation based on, it's a dollar amount that you get that everybody gets, but a portion of it is based on where you're at in terms of how much revenue you get per pupil on a subset of all the revenue formulas that the state has. And so this for us is an additional $843,000. It's actually down a little bit because we are basically our tier 1 revenue, which is the what they call the equity, or the equity gap. We're closer to the 95th percentile, so we have a little bit less dollars there. So we're down $1.39 per pupil unit, but and so about $11,000 increase there. Q-Comp, it's really called, it's Teacher Alternative Compensation Levy, and this pays for us to help our staff become more, get more experience, learn a little bit more about teaching and become better teachers. So Q-Comp revenue, the total is about $2.6 million, but 35% of it is, I'm sorry, $2.9 million. 35% of it is levied locally, and that's $1,081,000. This year, it's up slightly, $26,000. It's funded at $260 per the head count, as opposed to every other formula, which is funded at adjusted pupil units. This is actually strictly on the head count. Our operating capital levy is a portion of total revenue of $2.786 million. This is based on a dollar amount of $79 per pupil plus $109 per pupil times 1.3727, which is the average age of the square footage in our district. So that goes up a little bit, but basically we're up 7 cents from last year. So it doesn't go up a lot. But this pays for a variety of things. It can pay for anything from lawnmowers for the grounds crew to desks and chairs and technology and other types of equipment that we use across the district. So about a $50,000 increase. Actually, this year the levy percentage is 38.37%, which is up from 36.28%, and actually up from the year before that was about 35%. Instructional facilities lease levy. This levy is used to pay for bonds on instructional building additions that we've done through the years. And the payment will fluctuate slightly based on debt schedules, or if we do refundings and the payments drop, the levy can go down. It's $212 per pupil, and the district cap based on our estimated pupil units is $2,583,000. So it pays for things like all-day classrooms, some of the elementary classrooms and music rooms, middle schools, high school classrooms and music rooms, the gymnasiums at Clear Springs and Scenic Heights. Various spaces that we've added over the years. This year, it's actually going up $304,000, but the reason for that is we actually are moving the TSP bond payments, TSP building and the Groveland Gym bond payments over into this levy because we're sort of leaving money on the table, so to speak. So we're fully maximizing this levy, but it frees up about $330,000 in operating capital, which is much more flexible money and can be used to help support operations. Debt service levy is $7,297,000. It's up about $243,000. Again, this is based on our scheduled bond payments. Plus, we have to do for general obligation bonds, which these are an additional state mandated 5%. That 5% ensures that we have enough money available if we have delinquencies on tax payments to actually make the payments when they're due. And what happens is then on an annual basis, after the payments are made, you develop what's called a debt service excess in the debt service fund, and the statutes require the Department of Ed to basically do a calculation and pull back some of those dollars to reduce future levies. Basically, this levy pays for long-term facility maintenance bonds primarily, and the 1996 building referendum bonds that mature in 2026. Those were the 1996 building referendum bonds were the last building referendum that the district has run. So it's coming up on 25 years since we actually ran a bond referendum for buildings in the district. The OPEB debt service levy is relatively flat, down about $4.6 million, but the scheduled payment coming up is $1,687,000. This is a payment on bonds that we issued to fund our other post-employment benefits trust fund to pay for retiree health insurance for any obligations that the district committed to in contracts prior to 2002. There's a little bit of history of the rates here. We started out issuing these in 2008, 2009, and right at the end of the year, right in the middle of the financial crisis, actually. But it was a good opportunity to make sure that this long-term liability was funded, and then not impact the general fund with the payments for it, for those long-term liabilities. So we sold bonds at 6.83 and 6.24%. We refinanced them down in FY16 to 3%, and we're going to take another bite at the apple in 2021 to further reduce the interest rate and flatten out the payments annually at about $1.47 million. So those are the major 9 levies, and so basically the bulk of the increase is in that category, or in those 9 categories. There's 12 other additional levies that apply to Minnetonka. There are some other levies that we don't apply for because we don't qualify, such as sparsity revenue, which is additional transportation revenue. This transition levy of $18,000 is a small dollar amount. It's been on the books for several decades. It was related to a historical carryover formula that has stuck around. It was related to some changes in financing that were made back actually in the 90s. Career and technical education, we levy for 35% of the estimated budget for our career and technical education programs. And so we're at $269,000 and an increase of $47,000 based on programs that qualify as career and technical education. Safe Schools levy funds primarily counselor positions. We have more counselors than what this levy pays for, but it's $438,000 this year, $36 per pupil. Again, the increase is just because of a slight uptick in the estimate to 11,100 of the number of pupils we'll have. The ice arena levy of $484,878. It's actually a decrease from last year. This is a levy that we and 12 other school districts have. We actually own our own ice arena. Most other school districts in the state actually will skate at a city-owned or a county-owned ice arena, and they'll pay rental. But we own Pagel 1. We don't own Pagel 2. We rent time in Pagel 2, but we own Pagel 1, and so we took over ownership in September 2012, which allowed us to be able to start doing long-term maintenance on the facility that was built in 2001. But it also allowed us to basically refinance the building and actually have lower payments at a lower interest rate, so that the payments for both us and MYHA dropped considerably from what we were paying as our lease, which was really going to pay the higher bond payments that MYHA had, because with our AAA bond rating, we could get much lower interest rates. This is a reimbursement levy, so we get operating revenue every year from MYHA. We lease it to them at $100,000 a year, and they operate it. And then, so that's our revenue for the year, but then all the expenses above the $100,000 we can put on the levy. And this is so it's a reimbursement levy. So the fund balance for the ice arena actually looks like it's negative because there's 2 years worth of reimbursements in the pipeline coming back. So I always say if there was ever a end to hockey in Minnesota, 2 years after that happened, we would end up having the ice arena fund actually be at break-even level because we get our last 2 reimbursements. Again, that's never going to happen, but that's just to demonstrate how that works. It's you get reimbursed basically 2 years after the expenses are incurred. Health and safety levy covers a variety of costs that we have to do every year just to make sure our buildings are safe. Any fire marshal inspections and compliance, sprinkler and extinguisher testing, emergency evacuation procedures, any physical hazard corrections, lockout, tagouts on the machinery in the shops, things of that nature. So we have a $535,000 budget estimated on the projected expenditures. That's down about $78,000 from last year. Achievement and Integration Levy is a program that we used to participate in for a little while, but then we no longer qualify after some changes at the legislature. It actually requires to work in tandem with another district. But basically, this is being phased out, so this is only on here because it's being phased out, and we had actually levied on 19 pay 20, but it's actually being, that 35,791 is being taken back as an adjustment for prior years. So that'll drop off our levy next year. Reemployment insurance is estimated at $10,000. We always put in an estimated amount because it's very difficult to estimate exactly what we're going to do. So we're always in the ballpark, but there's always an adjustment. But based on the pandemic, we upped that $5,000 just because there's some issues that could crop up related to the pandemic. Community education has a $5.42 per population from the census done in 2010, which is 39,384. So it's $288,090. That will stay the same until we actually actually next year we probably should see a different number because the 2020 census is due in Washington in January of 21. So for 21 pay 22, we probably will see a different number on this. But that goes for community education. Early childhood family education is 0.259% of adjusted net tax capacity of the district. This is a formula that just was implemented a few years ago, and it started out at 0.33%, and then it went down to 2.92%. Now it's down to 2.59%, or 0.259%. So it's actually been dropping a little bit every year, but this helps to run our ECFE programs. We also have a lot of fee-for-service in those areas. School-aged extended day disability, we estimate $100,000 in there as a levy, and then there's a reimbursement of actual costs. So we get a reimbursement on the levy adjustments for actual costs, which actually are above the $100,000 mark. There's a couple of small dollar amounts, adult handicapped visit, which is really kind of a home visiting and help. There's $7,500. The formula is 50% of actual costs, but capped at $7,500. So we run probably a little larger program than that, but $7,500 is all that we can levy for. And then here's the home visiting levy. That's very similar. We actually do a count of the under 5 population. We're at 2,745, and the formula is 53.1% of $3 times the under 5 population. So 4,375 there. So those are the main levy categories, and then there's a prior year adjustments. We're always paid on actual results. The thing is most of the adjustments are from 2 years ago because you have to close your books, and the books are closed in October, November, December after the fiscal year is passed, and so the next levy that you can put them on is actually in the subsequent year. So you end up with getting then the actual tax collection 2 years after the actual results were, or the prior year adjustment to take money back. It actually ends up 2 years after the year when the actual results occurred. Those prior year adjustments are then added to the current levy. There's 21 prior year adjustments. Many of them are quite small, but I list 3 of them on this page. So this year, our total adjustments have a net dollar amount of $461,186. That's down from last year, which we had a net adjustment of $1,182. So it's actually a decrease. The reason for that is in 19 pay 20, we had several significant adjustments from prior year estimates on the operating referendum and local optional revenue because we had estimated a certain number of students, and we actually got more students than we had anticipated 2 years, back before. So that would have been on 17 pay 18, and it hit 19 pay 20. So for 20 pay 21, we have the three areas. We have some adjustments, local optional revenue from prior years, from 2 years ago, 125,000. Operating referendum, again, from 2 years ago, 139,000. And then in community education revenue, the prior year adjustment there is mainly related to that, the adult handicap levy. I'm sorry, the ECFE levy. So with flat enrollment, there's going to be less of these adjustments in future years, and we're starting to see that. So the total preliminary levy amount is, right now, it's estimated at $55,245,500.76. And I say estimated because if the department, we're not going to be making any changes, but if the Department of Ed makes any adjustments in some of the things they do, that could just go up or down just a little tiny bit. The increase is $1,041,000 or 1.92%. And again, compared to what we talked about last week, we were at 1.51. That was related to a $232,000 decrease in the amount of excess debt service excess that was being applied. They actually did the calculation and recalculated it and took away some of the debt service excess reduction of about $232,000, and so that's why we're at this level. How does this impact taxpayers? So these are the same home values that we use on our truth in taxation presentation: 300, 500, 700, and 900,000. So we show the estimated taxes from 19 pay 20. And if on a dollar increase at 1.92%, you see them ranging from $31.30 for a $300,000 home to $99.21 on a $900,000 home. And so you see there what the dollar amounts are that their estimated taxes would increase to for 20 pay 21. So for homeowners, there's factors that can impact the estimate on their individual calculation. If they get reassessed, and most of the cities reassess pretty systematically, some cities assess as much as 25% of their properties every year. So once every 4 years, they get a reassessment. And so a house can be, or other dwelling can be reassessed up to a higher market value, even though they haven't sold it. It can be assessed at a higher value based on market conditions. If they do any additions to the property or other improvements, that could, the cities will take the value of the permits and add that onto the value of the property. So if you did some improvements internally, but you didn't increase the square footage, but you did some improvements, they would get you, that's probably not the right way to say it, but they would add the dollar amounts onto your assessed value for the value of the permit. And then the thing is then on the other side of the coin, though, there is a lot of new construction still going on in our district. There's a lot of infill, even though we're mainly developed, there's a lot of infill parcels. And so there is new construction coming on every year. And so to the extent that there's new construction, that means there's more property to spread the tax on. And so that would go to offsetting some of the percent increase potentially if you didn't get reassessed up. So total property value in the district actually for this levy increased by $432 million. I've been trying to find, so far I haven't been successful in trying to get, most of the municipalities don't keep track, they just keep track of the increased value, they don't keep track of how much is new construction. Still trying to dig up that number though, at least for maybe Minneonka itself, just to try to get a perspective on it. But anyway, so it went up 4.83%, which is, again, some of that's increased value based on assessment, but a lot of that is going to be based on more property to spread. So in theory, if 1.92% of that 4.83 is new construction, that would go to completely offset somebody who doesn't get reassessed. So, but we'll see. It's all going to be based on the individual homeowner and their calculation. Usually when I get a call from somebody saying, they've watched our presentation and they're going, well, hey, I've got a property increase higher than what was presented, it's usually because they got reassessed or they did some type of improvement. So with that, that's in the presentation. So the next steps would be for you to discuss the levy, determine if you want to set up the levy. The recommendation is to, at this point in time, issue technically the maximum, which is the dollar amount, which is estimated at the dollar amount presented. And then that gets certified, sent to the Hennepin County, and then the final levy will be set in December.
Thank you very much. So as presented, it is the maximum. We'll review again in December. And so may I have a motion to approve the certification of the 2020 pay 2021 preliminary levy as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Lisa, thank you. Do you have anybody have any comments or questions? Chris?
Hey, Paul. As John said in the study session, to keep it under 2% is pretty good, so thank you for that. Just a couple questions on the refunding bonds that we just approved and just sold. So the effect on this levy is the payments for the refunding bonds are gone and then pushed out until we start paying on these. So you get the savings this year and then the increased savings.
Actually, we've got it set up so that the refunding bond payment is replacing the existing payment. So, and they're smaller bond issues, so the net result is going to be about a $4,000 difference.
Okay.
But what happens is, we structured the bonds so the payments were almost flat, but then they drop the second year out. And
So
that was
2
a
year-
way to
Yeah.
have good net present value savings.
So you'll continue to get savings
Yes.
in levies moving
Ongoing.
forward? Okay,
Yeah,
thank
in
you.
the future.
Mike?
Yeah, Paul, two questions. First, on the operating referendum, with the cap, is the inflation adjusted at 2.31%? Is that, so that's good through 2022? So the voters will have to approve again for the inflation adjustment, or will that stay on, beyond 2022?
When you run the referendum renewal, you have to ask them, can we issue this amount of taxes for the next 10 years? And you have to put in there adjusted for inflation. If you don't put in the term adjusted for inflation, then it would just be a flat dollar amount for 10 years.
Okay.
So we'll structure the question at that time to include in the inflation increase. That approve this dollar amount with the inflation factor. The other thing is, the inflation factor does change every year. So that 2.31% is the inflation factor this year, but then next year it'll get adjusted for whatever the CPI was in 2020 is what they'll be using, and that will get applied. So it might be 2.3 this year, it might be 1.1 next year, it might be 4, another year, but usually it's in the ones and the twos.
Perfect. No, thanks. That's helpful. Then on the Q-Comp, so are those funds, just for further education for teachers, or is there some performance? Is there a pool of funds that could be used to pay, for exceptional performance of teachers?
Well, there's a variety of coaching that goes along with it. Dr. Pearson, could you help me out a little bit with
Yeah.
that?
Well, there is part of it that's paid based upon their reaching goals. So when you look at the building goals under Q-Comp,
That's where it's.
that's all part of what factors in. So there are years when some teachers don't get that performance pay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Lisa?
Paul, it is, as Chris mentioned, really great that we're able to stay under 2%. Do you have any idea, in talking with your colleagues, kind of where other districts are at right now, and where any of our neighboring, where the municipalities are at? Because I know that obviously looks at the whole picture for our taxpayers.
I don't. I haven't had any contact with others.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Comments, questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is the approval of statement on board's commitment on excellence and belonging. And in front of you is the carry-in that we have this morning. We took all of the comments. Thank you for all of your feedback. You have the updated one, so I guess in order to get the conversation moving, may I have a motion to approve?
Actually, I don't have it.
It's on the front page of, do you have this document?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Yep. I'll give you just a second to take a look at it. In order to get the conversation moving, can I have a motion to approve the statement as presented here in front of you?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Chris, thank you. Any comments or questions, any changes? Lisa?
I am wondering on the first bullet, I know we made some changes after our conversation at the study session, but I wanted to get people's thoughts about on the first bullet, removing the word high before school in the first sentence, which then basically means that we're supporting success in school all the way through and preparing them for beyond school, which is where you talk about the post-high school plans and the, trade schools and military and all that, so.
So remove the first high, but not the second one.
The first high in the first line. So it would say providing students with the tools, opportunities, and support for success in school.
Great suggestion. I think it sounds good. I am seeing head nods.
Yep.
Okay, so I would make that a friendly amendment to my own motion.
Thank you. Any other changes? John, thank you again for getting us that additional bullet point. I know we were going back and forth at the study session, so thanks for providing that. Any other changes? Recommendations?
Just
Chris?
actually more of a question for the board. In some community feedback, in talking just in the second bullet point, the actual last word, disability, we talked about in some ways ability or disability. I don't know which is better, but I know that we've talked and other people have referred to it as ability. So I don't know. I'm okay with it as written, but I just wanted to bring that up. That would ability mean the same thing is what we're saying?
Thanks for bringing that up. I prefer ability.
Okay. So the friendly amendment would be changing the word disability to ability. And noting that just factors such as race, ethnicity, English language proficiency, socioeconomic status, religion, sexual orientation, or ability is not limiting us to those, I don't know,
Yeah.
characteristics or qualifications, just.
And I feel ability could be applied to so much more, where disability
Yeah.
is really, it's not, I mean, there's tons of disabilities, so
It could
but
be
it's-
ability of achievement, ability.
Right, I think it could apply a lot more, so,
Maybe
It would be
recommendation?
inclusive of neurodiversity, which is not a disability.
everything,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would accept that friendly amendment.
Okay.
Good recommendation. Okay, so we have a second friendly amendment. Any other comments, changes? Christine?
I still, on the third bullet point down, providing teaching and learning, we had discussed this at the study session, and I know there's a link that takes us to the teaching and learning website, but is there a noun we could put after teaching and learning, so that, like, teaching and learning program, pedagogy?
Services?
Services, yeah, I mean, just something, because teaching and learning seems like, a verb there, not a noun, unless you put
Okay.
an identifier after it. And people who aren't familiar might not understand.
So the recommendation is to add the word services after teaching and learning. So it would read as providing teaching and learning services to allow each student to achieve excellence where personal and academic achievement will flourish. Okay, I'm seeing a few head nods. So our third friendly amendment.
Which I will accept the third friendly amendment.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, thank you.
Sorry, one more.
No, keep going.
Nope, sorry, that's it.
We had discussion, especially around the first sentence, and I forgot to add this in my comments, I apologize, about linking the district vision.
So hyperlink,
Do we hyperlink vision, or do we put it over in support and resources, or we can do it later, but I forget I don't know if I think it was actually Lisa's comment, so.
Yeah, I think we could do both, right? So if we hyperlink the word vision and then we put it over under support and resources too, then I think then that makes it easy for people to figure out where it is.
Okay, So two more adjustments are adding, or I'm sorry, hyperlinking the word vision in that first sentence to our vision document, and then under support and resources, adding a vision document bullet point, which would be a hyperlink to that document also. Thank you. Great. Another great recommendation. Anybody else have any? Christine?
The second bullet point from the bottom, deepening our understanding of racial and socioeconomic factors in academic performance. I think that's great. I'm wondering why we're limiting ourselves to racial and socioeconomic factors.
Why we're what?
Why we're limiting ourselves to racial and socioeconomic factors as opposed to
Any?
any,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but I don't know how to phrase that.
I had this-
Also, are you saying it could say deepening our understanding of factors affecting academic performance?
Something along those lines, sure. Yeah.
Did we write it that way in the goal? I forgot to check that.
Oh, I think it
Hold
might
on.
be.
I just want to make sure we're consistent.
Yep.
Because there's
I
a few
think
things in
that's-
the action plan and other things I want, but the wording is directly out of the goal, so I would think we want to be consistent.
Okay, give me
Can
one
we just say
second.
factors limiting academic performance?
So the current recommendation, did I hear you say that right, is deepening our understanding of factors limiting performance, limiting academic performance, is that what you said?
It is, but now that
Uh-huh.
you read it out loud, we do need a
Yeah, or you could say
word in front of it.
affecting.
I'm just taking a look at the goal.
Maybe just deepening our understanding of factors limiting academic performance or understanding of limiting factors.
Yeah, I don't see that we say.
I guess I'd rather say though impacting it or something like that because limiting,
Impact, yeah, sure.
impacting means in any way, right? So.
Yep, okay, so can you read it one more time, Lisa? Deepening our.
Deepening our understanding of factors impacting academic performance.
And I think that leans toward, just my comment to that would be barriers to success, because it could be anything.
Right.
So-
Deepening our understanding of factors impacting, is that what you said?
Yes, impacting.
Academic performances.
I love the change, and I think it's a great amendment. In the goal, second sentence, we are committed to deepening our understanding of racial and socioeconomic factors in academic performance and discovering new strategies for closing all achievement gaps. So, I mean, I think it encompasses that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was in there, so.
yeah.
Okay.
No, thanks for clarifying that. I think, as we said, the goal is like specific to a few years where hopefully this commitment will
Yeah.
remain alive. So, yeah, I think that's good to tie it together though.
Okay, so there is another friendly amendment, which would be deepening our understanding of factors impacting academic performance.
Yep, I'm all good.
Okay, thank you.
That's great, yep.
Yep,
Did you just say impacting performance or affecting?
well, it was impacting,
Impacting.
Okay, thank you.
yep.
I like it.
Go ahead, Christine.
And the last bullet point, the discovering new strategies for limiting all achievement gaps. I'm struggling with the word discovering because, I mean, we don't want to just discover them, we want to implement or try them out or something. So is there another word for discovering that could encompass action also? Or is that implied?
That's also directly from the goal.
Is that?
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know that, in a year, that we'd be able to,
Yeah, okay.
But I think part of her point is that it's a commitment, like a long-term commitment.
yeah.
I mean, you could say discovering and leveraging new strategies.
Or could you say pursuing?
Pursue, yeah, yeah.
But that doesn't say to me that you're like using it. That just says you're like looking at it.
Pursuing new strategies?
Yeah.
You don't think that
To
means,
me.
it doesn't mean implementing, you don't think? Like if you're pursuing?
I don't know.
Okay, so I hear two recommendations, changing it to discovering and leveraging new strategies for eliminating all achievement gaps, or pursuing new strategies for eliminating all achievement gaps. Preference? I like leveraging, since nobody's talking. I like,
What about pursuing and leveraging? We'll combine them.
oh, okay, third recommendation. John?
Yeah, maybe it's just combining the two. It's just discover and pursue new strategies.
Does that go back to what you're saying, pursue isn't implementing?
No, pursue is.
Okay. Discover,
Discover and pursue new strategies for eliminating achievement gaps, or eliminating all achievement gaps.
okay. Would it be discovering and pursuing?
No, I think it's
No,
discover and pursue.
Discover and pursue.
No, I
Okay.
think it has to be inging because they're all the rest of them
All
are.
the other ones are
All right. I'll let the English majors
okay.
fine tune that.
So we'll work with our communications director on that. But those, that is, the recommendation is, I'm gonna use the word discovering and pursuing new strategies for eliminating all achievement gaps, and I'll work with Jackie on that just as a final tweak. Any,
I like it.
Yeah,
yep,
that's
okay, so
really
thank you,
good.
Mike. Any other comments, recommendations, changes? Okay, friendly amendments to go over them, and then we're going to, I'm sorry, is that a hand? No, okay. Okay, so just to go over the friendly amendments, we're eliminating the high in the first bullet point, the first high. So it's gonna read as providing students with the tools, opportunities, and support for success in school and preparation for beyond school, whether their post-high school plans are to choose 2-year or 4-year college, trade school, technical college, or the military or employment. Another friendly amendment is on the second bullet point, changing the word disability to ability. So it's going to read as programs and services will be in place at all schools in our district to ensure that student academic performance will not fall into patterns identifiable by factors such as race, ethnicity, English language proficiency, socioeconomic status, religion, sexual orientation, or ability. The third bullet point friendly amendment is adding the word services after teaching and learning. So providing, it's going to read as providing teaching and learning services to allow each student to achieve excellence where personal and academic achievement will flourish. The next friendly amendment is changing the fifth bullet point to read as deepening our understanding of factors impacting academic performance. Sorry. Deepening our understanding of factors impacting academic performance. And then another friendly amendment is the last bullet point, discovering and pursuing new strategies for eliminating all achievement gaps. And the final friendly recommendation is hyperlinking the word vision in the first sentence and adding the bullet point under support and resources as a hyperlink. Am I missing anything? Okay, all right, so with those friendly amendments, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have a commitment statement, a commitment to excellence and belonging statement. We can move on to our next agenda item, which is the approval of statement on board's action plan, resource guide, and website relevant to Goal 2. Again, in front of you is the carry-in item. The next pages are the website. Thank you to everybody who sent in their suggestions, recommendations. There were a couple of people who had the same, talked about the same bullet point, if you will, or page, so we kind of combined your suggestions, so sometimes you'll see it wasn't tweaked as exactly you worded it, but take a look. In order to get the conversation going, can I get a motion to approve the statement on board's action plan, resource guide, and website relative to Goal 2?
So moved.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there a second? Mark, thank you. Any comments, changes, modifications to the action plan, website, and resource guide? Lisa?
I had a question for all of us on the policies. We have the review of them starting in September, but we don't have an end date as to when they will be approved, at least that I saw on this
Are you on
list.
curriculum and policy page? Sorry, what page?
No, I'm on
are-
the action plan.
Action
Sorry.
plan. Okay, thank you.
September 2020.
So I just don't know if we want to commit to an end. I mean, policy 606 has a commitment to an end, but the rest of the policies do not.
So if I remember correctly, when we discussed the goal, we didn't put a time frame around it.
We
just,
didn't.
Because we didn't know where, as the year went on, how it would look, and we knew we'd bring the policies to the board to review throughout. So do you want to add at this time an end date to this?
And I guess if we don't want to add an end date for sure, which means just that the end of the school year would be the end date, I just wonder if we maybe need to put in here, continue policy work or something like that, so that it's clear to people who are reading the plan that we're continuing to work on those policies. And that could just be a bullet on every month, right? That just would say continue policy review work or something like that. Then we don't have to put an end date on it if we don't know what that might be at this point.
And if we get done early, do we then update the action?
Yeah, then you
plan?
update that. I mean, I would imagine this action plan is a living thing that as it gets shifted around, that there can be changes, right?
Or link to the policy once it's done.
Right, yeah, link to the new policy once it's done.
So go to February 2021.
Oh, I see, approve any changes to related policies. Yeah, that's fine then.
The,
I missed that. Sorry.
no. Approve any changes to related policies. I guess, would that be the deadline?
Well,
Because-
in theory, that would be then the deadline.
The
yeah.
deadline, because there's a chance that we will have some of them approved before February 21.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think it's okay.
Sorry, I missed that.
No, that's okay. So can we leave it as is?
Yep,
Okay.
I'm good with it then.
Any other,
I have a couple.
Christine?
Under the curriculum and policy review, under policy and practices review, it talks about clear behavior and conduct expectations will be established and
Can you,
communicated.
I'm sorry, can you put your microphone a little, I cannot hear you.
Sure.
Thank you.
So under the policy and practices review, where it says clear behavior and conduct expectations will be established and communicated to all students and staff. Additionally, systems for reporting infractions will be consistently implemented and enforced. Where are we talking about consequences? Because that sentence right there says systems for reporting will be consistently implemented and enforced. The systems for reporting will be consistently implemented and enforced, but nowhere do we address discipline. Was that intentional, or, because I was hoping that as we do the policies, we can just make sure that the consequences and discipline are communicated and consistent and, appropriate.
I'm
Sure,
thinking.
You thinking maybe that last sentence needs like a link to it or something?
No, I'm saying that the sentence, it says systems for reporting infractions will be consistently implemented and enforced.
Right, but the last sentence on that paragraph says, these expectations will hold everyone in the schools accountable for unacceptable behaviors.
But what expectations? The policies? Because we don't really talk about the discipline or consequences.
Got to go back to the policies. Are we reviewing?
Yeah, because I think the policies, Dr. Peterson, correct me if I'm wrong, the policies reflect back to the
It cross-references to that.
consequences, if you will.
It does, I agree, and that was part of the discussion we had on Thursday, is just to make sure that we're reviewing that, and making sure that it's consistently applied and isn't super, because if you look at the student discipline policy, there's a whole list of things that fall under that, and then there's a whole list of actions that can be applied to the behavior. So just making sure that we review that and that basically the consequences are appropriate for the action. Right now, it's kind of a laundry list of things you could potentially do.
So yes, are you saying maybe that policy should be added to the review?
I thought it was by context of it being cross-referenced, but what I'm saying too is we're talking about the policy and practices review here, that we're going to review the policies and practices. And then we talk about clear behavior and conduct expectations will be established and communicated, but we don't really talk about consequences of your actions in this?
Well, can you really, as a broad topic, because wouldn't it be different? I mean, I'm under the assumption that we'll look at that policy as it's cross-referenced. I'm trying to think of how to edit the statement. I believe we're gonna address it when we look at the policies, but I don't know how to change that statement without, I guess what I'm saying is to keep it broad enough that it could apply to anything.
I mean, you could say clear behavior, conduct expectations, and disciplinary actions or consequences or something in there. I mean, it just, when I read this, I read it as, we're gonna, talk about the dress code, but nowhere are we going to talk about if it's violated.
Well, that would be in the policy work. That's when we review the policy, because that would be.
I understand what you're saying, and I understand when we'll do it, it's just not on this page.
Okay, so what would be, is there a recommendation to clarify?
I mean, I think holding people accountable encompasses all of that. Accountability, it could be disciplinary action.
Yeah,
I mean, if we want.
that's how I read it.
If
but-
we want to
Okay.
specifically add the policy, it sounds like Christine wants us to add a policy review for that. I mean, I don't know that we need to add disciplinary action to this because everything is different. Every single situation is different, and you have to keep it broad enough and
Right.
allow administration to apply a broad range of disciplinary action. So, just because, I mean, your third infraction of a dress code, it depends what that is, what the person is. I wouldn't want it to be 3 strikes, you're out for every single person. I would trust that the administrators would be able to do that.
I understand what you're saying. I guess my issue is just, it says clear behavior and conduct expectations will be established, and then the last sentence, these expectations will hold everyone accountable. So we talk about behavior and conduct expectations, and then these expectations will hold everybody accountable, but it doesn't say how they're going to hold them accountable.
And I think that applies to the policy work
Okay.
when we review and cross-reference to what that discipline, I think, for some reason, the number 413 is coming to my mind with that discipline, policy number. It's cross-referenced in,
Yeah, I mean,
some of
this
the-
policy has its own set of.
yeah, so I would think that's where we're gonna review it. This is just describing and explaining that the expectation is that our policy work is gonna hold everybody in our schools accountable for these unacceptable behaviors.
Okay.
Is there a recommendation or a change to clarify? We're
I mean, I don't
open
know
to,
what you would-
open to
yeah,
discussion.
I just don't know what you would change it to.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I think to Christine's comment, though, I think once we get into it, there may be opportunities to clarify further.
Yep.
How that links in, potentially even examples, right? So in the case of a third, policy violation in this area, this would be, it could be expulsion, could be suspend. It could go into that for examples, but I think it's fine as it's written here, but I think as we get into the policy work, to Christine's point, we may need to make it, to put language in there that's more understandable for everybody. So
Sure.
there's not, we're not circling back. We don't want to limit, the principals from having a scope and having some flexibility and pliability in how they're going to enforce that. But I think, yeah, so we're gonna have to get into it and we'll circle back. But I'm okay with how it's written right here, but I think her point, as we get into it, some of it will probably need to be, the verbiage will be needed changed for each policy.
Sure. Yeah, we'll absolutely review that. And the other thing that I'm thinking is if we don't have if it comes to us at a later date, we can always modify the website too if we come up with some sort of verbiage that does clarify these last 2 sentences on this curriculum and policy review page. If we don't have a recommendation to make a modification today, we can always come back and make that, this is a working document here, or a website, right? It's a website that we're gonna be making modifications to and changes to as the year goes on. So, if we don't have a friendly amendment to that today, we certainly can look at it again in the future if something through our policy work becomes more clear to us.
Okay.
Okay?
I do
Or-
have
Yeah, go ahead.
Under the support for staff, under training and professional development opportunities, I think I had commented on this, but it might not have come across, that when I see a bullet point or a topic that says training and professional development opportunities, under support for staff, I automatically think that the training and professional development is related to the staff, and we have underneath here that says teachers and staff will be directed to provide students with information around topics related to. So I thought that it was interesting that we were putting kind of student training underneath, training and professional development, but I can, I guess, see the tie-in. My other point on this is the last sentence is, these will be age appropriate and connected to its curriculum. I'm not sure its is the right use of, maybe connected
Okay,
to
where
the-
I'm not seeing the word "it's," I'm just not following.
The
Can you?
last word.
The last
sentence.
Okay,
Last sentence, second to last
so
word.
do you have a recommendation to make a change?
The,
You could just delete the word "it's."
yeah.
These will be age appropriate and connected to curriculum, to
Or
the.
district curriculum?
Yeah,
Okay, so,
I just didn't know what its was referencing to there.
okay, so the friendly amendment, is to take the, that last sentence on support for staff in, these will be age appropriate and connected to
District curriculum.
district
Yeah,
curriculum,
that's fine.
okay?
And then I guess, do we think that that's the right place for this? Because we're kind of slipping in student training underneath support for staff and training and professional development.
I do, I think there's a connection
Okay.
there, but,
Okay.
and maybe too, as we move through the goal, we might have some modifications to this.
Okay. And I guess my only other comment on this is, teachers and staff will be directed to provide students. I guess some people might question that, like, how will they be directed? Who will direct them? Is
So
there
what's the recommendation?
is there a milder word?
Well, you could just say teachers and staff will provide students,
Yeah,
like get rid of "be directed to" and just say "will provide."
yeah, I think that's,
The only connection I see there is training, but, okay, so the recommendation is teachers and staff will provide students with information.
yeah.
Is that the
I like
right?
that better, yeah.
Yep,
Yeah, that's fine.
okay.
I think it's great.
Okay, just to clarify, for Carrie and, that on the support and staff page, it's the last sentence, the last two sentences? Teachers and staff will provide students with information around topics related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. These will be age appropriate and connected to district curriculum. Okay. Christine?
Sorry. Under support for students, whereas academic opportunity and access, Minnetonka Schools will improve systems and structures of communication, access, and enrollment in its most rigorous courses for underrepresented students. Any barriers for underrepresented students must be removed. I'm taking that literally to mean, for example, admission to honors classes, admissions to navigators. Are we saying that there are going to be no requirements? Because that's how I read that statement.
So what's your recommendation to make a change?
I don't know. I was putting it out there for discussion.
Okay.
You could just delete that sentence and just say Minnetonka Schools will improve systems and structures of communication, access, and enrollment in its most rigorous courses for underrepresented students. A comprehensive review will be conducted of current placement procedures and enrollment in these courses.
I think that's probably the best approach.
Okay.
That would read a lot better and definitely, I mean, it's a really strong statement.
It is, yeah.
And it could be taken a lot of different ways.
So the recommendation, friendly amendment is to remove that sentence under academic opportunity and access. So remove the any barriers for underrepresented students must be removed. Okay? Thank you. Thanks, Christine. Any additional, Chris?
I just had a question for the board. As we looked at support and resources and looked at the community resources, and I mean, we had linked to some New York Times resources and really a comprehensive list. I obviously didn't and don't have time to go through and read every single one of those books. Do we feel like promoting all of those resources is appropriate? You know, what, meaning, could we be the public, one side or the other? Are we not going far enough one way, or is it too far? You know, is everybody comfortable with it? I just kind of looked at it and it's like, oh, there's a lot here. I mean, there didn't seem to be a lot of the titles that are probably the most controversial. I was okay with it. I just more wanted the board's feedback. You know, are we going to be critiqued because the wrong book or the wrong article is on there? And you know, are we okay with that?
That's an interesting point. To follow on to that, I was actually wondering who's going to be maintaining this, or is it just going to remain static? These list of resources.
I don't think it's gonna remain static. I do think that it can be modified throughout time, but Dr. Peterson, do you have a recommendation of who could help vet the resources, or do you have a comment on?
Amy and Steve Urbanski.
Urbanski.
Right.
So I think this is a starting point for this. We did add that disclaimer on the bottom where you say, please note.
Yep.
It is just a starting point for a moment. Go ahead, Lisa.
Katie, do I recall correctly, and maybe Dr. Getty can tell us, I believe that these came from Scholastic or somewhere like that was
Okay.
already been vetted. I don't think that these are,
Okay.
these
Yep.
are, I mean, I share your concern of making
Yeah.
sure that we don't have inappropriate things there, but I believe that this resource list came from
This
Scholastic.
list that you see in front of you came from Scholastic. So this
Okay.
is,
Yep.
that's where this starting point has come from. So as,
And I think part of it is just so that as we get questions, you know, especially board leadership knows how to respond to it, and obviously you already know, so.
Yep.
I think that's important, that it's
well,
a.
we
it's a-
all should know.
We didn't just come up with this, we went to a very good resource that we use for all of our, reading and different things, and I think that's great, okay.
Christine?
Maybe we could just move the please note / disclaimer to the top, because when they're at the bottom, nobody ever reads it, so then we can preface it, or that's the first thing that people see before they scan
Okay.
the whole list.
So the friendly amendment is to move that please note more to the top of the page.
I think that,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's
Great.
okay.
Any other modifications, changes? Sorry, I was looking down reading. Okay, I'm not hearing or seeing any. So the friendly amendments on the table are, on the support and staff page, we made those two modifications to the last two sentences, so we're reading it as, teachers and staff will provide students with information around topics related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. These will be age-appropriate and connected to district curriculum. Moving to the next page will be support for students, under support for students is we're removing the word we're removing the sentence, any barriers for underrepresented students must be removed. And then the final is on that resource page, we are moving the please note disclaimer from the bottom of the page to the top. Am I missing any of the friendly recommendations? No, okay, seeing none, thank you again for all the feedback and the work, the recommendations to get to where we are. So with those friendly amendments, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. So, we will have, it won't be implemented immediately, so we will work with district, the communications department to make these final tweaks and get it up on the website. Our goal is to have it by the end of the month, September 30th.
Will we make an announcement or just part of school board news from the next meeting, regular meeting, or how will we, or is it just gonna appear?
Great question. I don't have an answer, or we can work with
Well, I mean,
communications on that
Part
too.
of that comes through the board reports on board meetings.
Board meetings,
You've done this, so that'll be reported out to the public.
Yeah.
And if you recall, that's the one most relied upon source of
Yeah.
information by the public. So I would think that should cover it.
that,
I think
I mean,
it's-
based
I
on
think
the
it's fine. I just was
feedback,
asking
that's
the
the
question.
best, how parents receive the information. So, yeah, we'll work with, Dr. Getty on that, but. All right, so moving on to we are to the point, for the consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Lisa. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, motion carries. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Thank you, Christine. Second. Mike, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye, opposed? All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.